In a remote mountain village stood an old funeral house, long abandoned. The wooden floors creaked, the ceiling leaked, and in the basement lay a row of empty coffins, relics from the colonial era. One night, Raffi, a young night guard, took over his father's shift. He didn't believe the rumors that something lived behind the coffins, but around 2 in the morning, the lights in the basement flickered, then went out completely. In the darkness, Raffi heard the sound of wood scraping, as if something was pushing the coffin lids from inside. He turned on his flashlight, its beam trembling in his hand. One of the coffins was slightly open, and from the crack seeped a swirl of black mist. Raffi stepped closer, his breath quick and shallow until something grabbed his ankle. He screamed and pointed the flashlight downward. But what held him wasn't human. Its skin was gray, its fingers long and bony, with black, sharp nails. Raffi kicked frantically and tried to run, but the thing began crawling out of the coffin. Its face had no eyes, only a gaping hole that hissed and whispered, "These coffins aren't for the dead, but for those who never truly died. The creature staggered toward him, leaving a trail of black blood on the floor. Raffi bolted for the door, but as he turned back, he saw every coffin in the room trembling, as though something inside each of them was waking up. The next morning, the funeral house was empty. There was no sign of Raffi, only his fallen flashlight, and deep claw marks etched into the basement wall. The villagers thought Raffi had run away. No one dared to enter the funeral house again, except Nadia, Raffi's sister. 3 nights after his disappearance, she took a lantern and went to find him. The house was silent, swallowed by fog. When she pushed the door open, the air smelled like rust and rot. "Raffi," her voice trembled. No answer. She descended the stairs to the basement. The lantern flickered, lighting rows of old coffins, all closed again, perfectly lined up. Too perfect. On the dusty floor, she found Raffi's flashlight, still smeared with something dark. When she picked it up, a faint breathing sound echoed from behind the far wall, slow, heavy, and wet. Nadia froze. The wall was moving. The bricks seemed to pulse like flesh, expanding and contracting with each breath. From between the cracks, a hand slid out, gray and thin, followed by a whisper that made her skin crawl. "He's still here. Inside. Nadia stumbled backward as the wall split open, revealing a narrow passage of dripping stone. She saw footprints leading inside, Raffi's shoes. Against every instinct, she followed them. The tunnel was cold and damp, lined with old coffins nailed into the walls like honeycombs. Some of them trembled softly, as if something inside was still alive. At the end of the passage, Nadia found an open coffin, and inside, not Raffi, but a shadow shaped like him, whispering her name. Its voice was identical to her brother's, but its smile was wrong, too wide, too empty. "You came, just like it said you would." Then, the tunnel lights flared, one by one, and every coffin lid slowly began to lift. The last thing Nadia saw before her lantern shattered was hundreds of eyeless faces, all turning toward her at once. When Nadia didn't return by dawn, the villagers finally went to the funeral house. They found the front door open, the floor soaked with black stains that weren't quite blood. No one dared to go down to the basement, not after the sounds they heard from below. It wasn't crying, it wasn't screaming, it was whispering, dozens of voices blending into one, calling names that didn't belong to anyone alive. That night, the local priest, Father Dimas, decided to bless the house. He brought holy water, a cross, and a lantern that glowed with trembling light. The deeper he went, the colder it became. The basement door was locked from the inside, yet when he touched it, it swung open on its own. The smell hit him first, like wet earth and rotten flowers. Inside, the coffins were gone. All that remained were outlines on the floor. Dark silhouettes burned into the concrete, as if the coffins had been there for centuries. Then, from the corner of the room, came a soft, childlike whisper. "Father, help us. He turned. Nadia stood there, pale, trembling, eyes hollow, but her shadow didn't move with her. Instead, her shadow was reaching toward him. "They took him," she said weakly. "They made him one of them." Before Father Dimas could react, the ground cracked open, and hands began crawling out, one after another, gray, eyeless, whispering mouths sewn shut but still murmuring. The priest poured holy water, but the drops turned to smoke before they touched the creatures. Then he saw it, Raffi, emerging from the darkness. His skin was gray, his eyes gone, and his voice, not his own. "Father, the coffins are not prisons. They're doors." As Raffi raised his hand, the room filled with a thunderous breath, as though the entire house had come alive, every wall expanding and collapsing like lungs. Father Damas screamed a prayer, and the lantern shattered, plunging everything into blackness. By sunrise, the house had collapsed. No bodies were found, only rows of new coffins, freshly nailed shut. And carved into each lid was a single word: awakened. 3 days after the funeral house collapsed, the villagers thought it was over. They sealed off the area, placed warning signs, and built a fence around the ruins. But at night, people swore they could still hear it, the slow rhythm of breathing coming from beneath the ground. Father Damas never returned. Nadia was found wandering near the river at dawn, soaked and trembling, clutching something wrapped in black cloth. When they unwrapped it, they found a rusted coffin nail and a small, beating heart impaled on it. She was taken to the local clinic. The doctor said she wouldn't stop whispering, even in her sleep, over and over, the same words: "They're still building. More doors. .. That evening, a group of teenagers snuck past the fence, filming a vlog. Their flashlight caught a strange sight. The ground was breathing, rising and falling like a chest. And in the center, where the funeral house once stood a single coffin, black, unmarked, and freshly nailed shut. One of them, Ronnie, laughed nervously and tapped the coffin. It tapped back. The others ran. Ronnie didn't. Her camera kept recording as the coffin lid slowly lifted, just a crack. From inside came a voice, dozens of whispers speaking in unison. "You opened the door. .. Now you must feed it." The video ended there. The next morning, Ronnie's body was found lying on the road, eyes open, mouth sewn shut with coffin nails. And when the police brought her to the morgue, the drawers were already full, each one containing a coffin that hadn't been there the night before. At midnight, Nadia woke up screaming. The walls around her hospital bed were bleeding black stains that weren't blood, and from beneath the floor came that sound again, the breathing. Then she realized it wasn't coming from under her, it was coming from inside her chest. The nurses said Nadia flatlined at 3:17 a.m., but when they tried to cover her body, she exhaled a long, trembling breath that fogged the room's windows from the inside. Her heartbeat returned, but the monitor didn't show a normal rhythm. It pulsed in a strange pattern. 3 beats, a pause, then a whisper that the machine somehow picked up through static. Open. 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 The hospital's power flickered. Every light in the corridor dimmed to a faint red glow. When the staff tried to move Nadia to another room, they found wet footprints leading out of her bed. Though she hadn't stood up, the security camera footage showed it. Nadia lying motionless, yet her shadow rose first, walking toward the door before her body followed, stiffly mimicking its movement. She was found hours later in the hospital chapel, kneeling before a row of coffins meant for the morgue. Each coffin had a name carved on it. The last one read, Father Damas. And that's when his voice echoed from within the coffin. "Nadia, you shouldn't have brought the nail." She screamed and dropped the rusted nail she had been clutching since the night of the collapse. The floor around her cracked open, and from the fissures rose arms made of black ash, dragging themselves toward her. The air turned thick, heavy, like breathing through wet soil. Then, one by one, the other coffins began to breathe. The lids lifted slightly, releasing faint whispers that formed a single, unholy chant. "The doors must feed. The doors must live. .. Nadia's shadow elongated, twisting across the walls until it covered every corner of the chapel. Her eyes turned black, her voice no longer her own. "They are awake," she said, "and they are hungry." Moments later, the chapel lights went out. When the police arrived in the morning, there were no bodies, only rows of new coffins, freshly nailed shut, each one with a heart nailed to its lid. And in the center, a single message written in blood: "One door remains. The heart will guide you." 2 days after the chapel incident, the hospital was shut down. Authorities sealed it with yellow tape, but at night, people could see dim lights flickering inside, like candles moving in circles. No one dared to go near, except Alia, a journalist from the next town, who came to investigate the whispers about living coffins. She had Nadia's last recording, a voice memo found on her phone. The audio was faint, distorted, and wet with static. At first, it sounded like breathing. Then came Nadia's voice. They built it under the ground, not a house anymore. It's a body. Alia followed the coordinates attached to the file, deep into the forest, to a patch of earth blackened like burnt skin. Her compass spun wildly. Her flashlight flickered even when she replaced the batteries. And then she saw it. Half buried beneath the soil was a coffin nailed shut, just like the others. But this one was huge, the size of a small room. Its surface pulsed, slow and steady, like something alive beneath the wood. On its lid was a carving of a heart, still beating. Alia touched it. The heartbeat stopped. Then the nails began to unscrew themselves, one by one, creaking, bending, falling into the dirt. The lid opened just a crack, and a cold mist poured out, whispering her name. Alia. She pointed her camera, trembling. Inside was not a body, but a tunnel, spiraling downward into the dark, lined with moving veins that pulsed like muscle. At the end of the tunnel, faint light shimmered, the color of candle flame and blood. Her camera caught a shadow crawling out from below. It had no face, only hands stitched together where its mouth should be. In its chest was the same beating heart that Nadia had once carried. The last door, it said without lips, "You must feed it to live." Alia tried to run, but the ground shifted beneath her. The coffin inhaled. The trees bent toward it. The soil split open. The last thing her camera recorded was her scream, and then silence. When rescuers found the site a week later, there was no coffin, no tunnel, only an enormous imprint in the ground shaped like a rib cage, and buried in the center was Alia's camera. The final frame showed her reflection in the lens, but her eyes weren't hers. They were black, hollow, and whispering. A month after Alia vanished, the forest was declared off limits. Yet curiosity never dies, and neither do whispers. That's how Reno, a young documentarian, found himself standing before the restricted zone with a drone, a flashlight, and an obsession. He had seen the leaked photo of Alia's camera, half buried in the dirt, its red light still blinking after weeks without power. He thought it was fake. He was wrong. When Reno entered the forest, his equipment began to glitch. The air felt thick, like he was walking underwater. And then, he heard it. Faint breathing, slow, rhythmic. It came from everywhere. He found the camera lying in the mud, still recording. The timestamp read 0 hours 0 minutes and 0 seconds, as if time had restarted. Reno pressed play. The screen flickered. Static. Then, Alia's voice. "If you're watching this, it's already open." The image shifted, showing the tunnel inside the coffin, pulsing like a living wound. But this time, the camera was moving deeper, as if someone else was holding it. Reno stepped back and froze. From behind him came the same sound as in the video. Step a step, breath, whisper. He turned. Dozens of coffins surrounded him, half buried in the ground, their lids slowly rising and falling like lungs. The whispers grew louder, forming words that echoed inside his skull. One heart left, one door closed. The camera in his hand began to melt, the lens twisting into a black spiral. Then, on its cracked screen, he saw his own face, inside the coffin, eyes open, whispering. The doors were never meant to be closed. The forest screamed. The ground split apart. From beneath, a colossal hand made of coffins reached upward, dragging the earth inward like breath. And then silence. When authorities returned weeks later, there was no forest, no graves, only a massive hollow crater, perfectly circular, pulsing faintly under the soil. In the center lay a single coffin, carved with words scorched into its lid.